Let's talk about Pixar. Do I need to say anything about them that hasn't already been said? I mean, it's Pixar. You know them, you love them, they're one of the greatest animation studios ever, and they've made many iconic animated films over the years. And this has certainly been an interesting decade for them. While the return to theaters last year with Lightyear didn't go over as well as they wanted, and it's certainly frustrating to see most of their catalog getting shipped to Disney+, some of their films they have made so far, such as Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, really continue to show that they still have magic to enchant audiences. Plus, it's been nice to see some new filmmakers get the chance to shine at the studio. And now we've got another new one we have on the docket, so let's take a look at it.
Sorry.
The latest new animated film to come out of Pixar is a rom-com entitled Elemental. Even though this isn't the first time Pixar has made a story with a romance, Wall-E takes the credit for that, it is the first time they have made a film that's a full-on romance story. And it's one that's been on my radar ever since it was announced last year, especially considering who was directing the film.
There were times where I was ashamed of my parents' language.
This is the director Peter Sohn, and if you don't recognize his face or name, you certainly know his voice. He's voiced Emile in Ratatouille, Squishy in Monsters University, Chicho in Luca, Socks in Lightyear, and most recently, Genki in Across the Spider-Verse. No, really, that's actually him. And he's been one of Pixar's key team members for a while, and one that I've really admired despite his bumpy first film. That was, of course, back in 2015 when he directed The Good Dinosaur. For those that don't know, the film had a pretty infamous production, as it had some huge problems, which led to its original director, Bob Peterson, being taken off the film, and Sohn was brought on to finish the film single-handedly. While I do think the film is decent, the film was not one of Pixar's best films, and it wasn't a huge hit at the box office. I feel that Sohn did the best he could knowing how troubled the film was, and even though it didn't fully work, I do appreciate elements about the film, and I certainly don't blame the film's problems on him. If there was anyone to blame, it's easily John Lasseter. If you want my full thoughts on the film, I made a video about it a long time ago where I go into a bit more detail on what the film did right and wrong, and I'll leave a link in case you're curious. Though despite that film's troubles, I was keen on what Sohn would do next, which brings us back to Elemental, a film that he was able to make from the ground up, and one that shows his personal touch, which he had previously brought to his short film Partly Cloudy, and the English dub of Ponyo. And one that I was hopeful would be a very cute and cheerful little film. And you know what? Let's talk about it. I've always been honest here, and that's not gonna stop today. So here we go. Here is my honest-to-God thoughts about Elemental.
I like it.
Yeah, I liked it. A lot, actually. I thought this was great. I know I've seen a lot of people say that this was not up to Pixar standards, and while I can certainly understand that, I personally disagree. I thought this was a really beautiful and cute film, and it truly made me smile. As I'm sure you all know, this is a film that focuses on anthropomorphized elements who live in Element City. Water, earth, fire, and air. Insert Four Nations joke here. We specifically focus on a fire family known as the Lumens, Bernie and Cinder, played by Ronnie Del Carmen and Sheila Ami, who moved to the big city to start a new life for their daughter Ember, played by Leah Lewis. Despite encountering some struggles against them, they're able to set up a shop called the Fireplace, with Bernie promising to give Ember the shop when she gets older. Years later, Ember is given the task to run the shop, which ends up messy, and soon gets the attention of a water inspector named Wade Ripple, played by Mamadou Adi, who deems the shop to be hazardous. Not wanting the shop to close and worried about her dad, whose health is failing, Ember soon tries to figure out how to stop the city from closing her shop with Wade's help, and soon the two end up becoming friends. Maybe even more than friends, and soon enough, conflicts emerge as the two wonder if they can truly be together despite their differences. So yeah, as I stated at the beginning of this review, I really liked this film. Is it one of the best Pixar films ever made? No, but I don't think every film they have to make has to be a masterpiece. For what it's worth, I went into this film expecting a very cute romance, and that's exactly what I got. There's been a lot of talk about the film being derivative and not feeling original, and yes, the story of this film is one that has been done before. I've also seen plenty of critics compare this film to Zootopia, particularly with its themes on prejudice, and while I can see that, I thought the way the film handled its themes were different. Especially considering that film was more of a mystery than this, which is a love story. But what matters most is not how original it is, but how well it's executed. And Pixar and Peter Sohn executed this film so beautifully. There's a lot of touching and funny moments throughout the film, and I was really able to see Sohn's personal comedic touch really shine through here, which was something that was lacking in Good Dinosaur. But But again, that wasn't his fault. This film has a much more simple story compared to that, and I think a lot of the heart mainly comes down to the character interactions. The primary focus on the film is Wade and Ember's romance, and it plays out quite nicely, and one where the chemistry feels genuine. Both of them are extremely flawed, and they do have emotional problems and situations, but it makes sense why the two ended up together. And I think there are some really emotional and touching scenes where the characters reveal things about themselves and also discover their talents. For instance, Ember ends up discovering that her talents lie elsewhere outside her family shop, and I really love that it plays out differently compared to other versions of this story, where we see a family member promise to inherit their children a position and career even if they don't want it. And I really think that the relationship between Ember and Bernie was genuinely sweet. This probably might be one of my favorite father-daughter bonding stories I've seen in a while. Plus, I could really see the parallels in Sohn's life play out here. That's one thing I've really loved about Pixar's recent work. I can really see and feel the director's voice in each of their films, and I could understand them as people and what their lives were like, and it's especially the case here. I also found the film quite funny as well. If you weren't very impressed with the jokes in the trailers, I can easily say that they are much better in context with the rest of the film. One of my favorite moments has to be a scene where Wade poses as a food inspector and is forced to eat some of Bernie's very, very hot food. That was a pretty funny scene. The only thing I didn't really like about this plot, if I have to be honest, was this driving conflict involving a leak. I know it was there for the film to have a climax, but I just thought it didn't work as well as the rest of the film, particularly as we see the two characters bond with each other. I think there could have been a better driving force that could have been put in place of this. However, the bonds between Ember and Wade, as well as her and her dad, more than made up for it to me. As far as the animation goes, this film is truly gorgeous. Pixar has made some beautiful animated films, but this might be one of their best looking to date. In a word, this film is colorful, with the world of Element City really coming to life and shining through thanks to Don Shank's vibrant production design. I know there have been critics that have called the world building confusing, but personally, I wasn't very confused. I thought the world was pretty understandable, and a lot of questions I had were easily explained. I mean, if you want to see bad animated world building, well, luck is right there. I mean, seriously, can anyone please explain to me how that world fully works? There are so many confusing parts to it that trying to explain it makes me feel like Charlie and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But I digress. The point is, I really didn't find the world building all that confusing, as I felt it made sense, and I figured the pieces fit together naturally. The one thing about this animation, though, that really impressed me is easily the character animation. Pixar has called this one of the most difficult animated films they made, and I can believe it, considering the characters literally have to blend character animation and effects animation, and boy, it is just amazing. I especially like the line detail with the fire people, and how their flames grow and shrink depending on their mood. That was the cool touch. And speaking of the characters in the film, they are easily the shining spot, as each of them feel relatable and don't fall into tropes. Like I said before, the conflicts that Ember and Wade fall into feel natural, and their struggles are revealed as the film plays out rather than having them spelled out immediately, and I really liked how the film avoided having them put into specific tropes that we expect out of these characters. And I really thought the love they had felt genuine and earned. And it helps that Lewis and Audie had some great chemistry together and truly gave some terrific performances. The one character I also thought was well written was Bernie. The bond he had with Ember was truly sweet, and I also really loved his backstory and the perils it had with Sohn's own parents going to America. And the other characters in this film are also pretty fun, particularly Wade's family. They really had a very funny scene in the film when Ember goes over to Wade's place. Plus, Wade's mom is played by Catherine O'Hara, and she's always fun. Also, I can't talk about this film without mentioning Thomas Newman's score. Honestly, I think this might be one of his best scores to date. There's a lot of different instrument he uses in the soundtrack, and it's so rich and atmospheric. Newman has been robbed of that Oscar so many times, and I really hope he wins it with this. Not just because he's one of my favorite composers and his Oscar is long overdue, but I really think this score deserves it. So yeah, I know there's going to be people who might disagree with me on this, but personally, I really loved Elemental, and I thought it was another winning film from Pixar. It might not rank as another masterpiece from them, but I don't expect a studio to constantly make masterpieces. I just want to see a good movie, and Elemental is great. The story is sweet and funny with a really unique personal touch, the animation is colorful and vibrant with a lively world, and the characters are funny, sweet, and emotionally deep. I thought this was such a lovely film from Pixar, and I cannot wait to watch it again, and I really recommend checking it out, especially in theaters. And please do see it in theaters. I really don't want to see this film bomb at the box office, as it is quite lovely, and I really think the folks at Pixar deserve some success with this. And I'm gonna give Elemental a 9. It really is such a lovely film. Pixar continues to enchant me with their films, especially with how special their stories, characters, and animation are. And like always, this film has all the great ingredients to make a wonderful film.
You see? He likes it.